everyone. So my name is Muhammad Sabedin from BSN English 2B, and we are tasked to convert the module 8 lessons to video presentations. So the contents of the module 8 are the following. First is Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales, Grimm's fairy tales, Disney versus Grimm's, original versions of children's fairy tales, The 1100 Nights, The Tale of Peter Rabbit, Curious George, Charlotte's Web, and lastly, Winnie the Pooh. So first, let's discuss Hans Christian Andersen. So Hans Christian Andersen was a Danish author. He is also a prolific writer of plays, travelogues, novels, and poems, but he is mostly remembered through or for his fairy tales that he wrote. So Hans Andersen's fairy tales consist of 156 stories across 9 volumes, have been translated into more than 125 languages. They have become embedded in Western collective consciousness, which are accessible to children, as well as presenting lessons of virtue and resilience in the face of adversity of mature readers. His famous fairy tales include the following: The Emperor's New Clothes, The Little Mermaid, The Nightingale, The Snow Queen, and etc. His stories have inspired beliefs, plays, and animated live-action films. So Grimm's fairy tales, when we say Grimm's, so there are actually 2 brothers, which are Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm's. So Grimm's fairy tales, originally known as the Children's and Household Tales, is a German collection of fairy tales by the Grimm brothers, obviously Jacob and Wilhelm. And the first published of the first edition of the book the first edition was published on the 20th of December in the year 1812. Volume 1 of the first edition contained 86 stories, which were followed by 70 more tales. So this was something numerous for the 2 brothers. So from first edition to the 7th edition that they have came up, in the 7th or by the 7th edition in the year 1857, the corpus of tales had expanded to 200 tales, and 10 of them is children's legends. With that, the UNESCO listed it as a memory of the world of registry, that the works that they have came up. So Disney versus Grimm. Throughout time, there has been an alteration of fairy tales. Grimm brothers originally, the stories that the Grimm brothers came up are much more graphic and violent than the fairy tales we think and we watch and we also read today or at the current era. This displays stories that are less graphic and fit for children, while still using the main idea and concept of the original Grimm brothers stories. The alteration of fairy tales is displayed throughout the stories from the Grimm brothers and in the newer stories brought by the Disney. Jacob and Wilhelm were 2 German brothers who grew up together and who both shared a love and passion for fairy tales. Their father passed away when they were both young, and it affected the brothers greatly for many years. So some of the differences between the how the Disney depicts or tell the stories or the fairy tales again versus the Grimm's. For instance, in the story of Rapunzel, in the original Rapunzel, she has a premarital sex with the prince up in her tower. The 2 spend many days together, living in joy and pleasure. During the time of the Grimm brothers, this was not something that is accepted by the society. There are traces of child abuse that are found in Grimm's stories. Child abuse is also shown in the original story of Snow White and the Huntsman, and also in the tragic violence in Cinderella, where the stepsisters cut off their toes and heels trying to make the slipper fit and later have their eyes pecked out by the jaws. So these are just some of the differences of Disney and Grimm's way of telling the story. So the next one is 1001 Nights. So 1001 Nights, the main frame story concerns Shahryar, whom the narrator calls a Sasanian king, ruling in India and China. Shahryar is shocked to learn that his brother's wife is unfaithful. Discovering that his own wife's infidelity has been even more flagrant, he has her executed. In his bitterness and grief, he decides that all women are the same. So none of them are actually faithful. That is his belief because of the experience that he had. So Shahryar begins to marry a succession of virgins, only to execute each one of them in the next morning, because she has a chance to before the woman that he married had a chance to dishonor him. So eventually the wazir, whose duty is to provide them, cannot find any more virgins. So the daughter of the wazir offer herself to the king, but in order to postpone the execution of the lady or the daughter of the wazir, she told the king stories in which she postponed every single stories that he had. Before she ends the story, she will not end the story immediately. Thus, the king will be curious enough to hear the conclusion of the story. So this goes on for 1001 nights, and hence the name. So that is the story of, or the summary of the 1001 nights. So the setting of the 1001 night is the islands or the peninsulae of India and China, and the theme of the story includes revenge, fate, fortune, and sexuality. So the characters in the frame story are the following: Scheherazade and Dunyazad, Shahrazad's father, and Shahryar, and also Shah Zaman, and also the daughter of the wazir. So the next one is the tale of Peter Rabbit. So the book introduces Peter Rabbit, who is far more adventurous than his siblings, who are Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail. Before going to the baker's, their mother warns them to avoid Mr. McGregor's garden because their father had an accident there and ended up in a pie. However, after she leaves, the naughty Peter immediately squeezes under the garden to gorge on Mr. McGregor's vegetables, while the others obediently go up the lane to pick up blackberries. Mr. McGregor soon spots Peter near the cucumber frame and chases the terrified young rabbit all over the garden, and Peter loses both his shoes and his little blue jacket. After finally locating the gate, Peter returns home frightened by a little wiser Mrs. Rabbit, gives Peter chamomile tea, but for his good siblings, she produces a supper of bread and milk and blackberries. So the setting of the tale of Peter Rabbit is in Britain's Lake District. Peter Rabbit, his cousin, are the characters of the story. Peter Rabbit, his cousin, Benjamin Bunny, and his triplet sisters, Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail. So the next one is Curious George. So Curious George is the illustration done by Hans Andersen. They himself are colorful and charming and offer a delightful visual experience for the children. The Curious George series has become a staple in children's literature. So Curious George series by Hans Andersen and Margaret Ray follows the adventures of a lovable and mischievous monkey named George. The first book, Curious George, introduces George as a curious little monkey who is brought from Africa to live with the man in the yellow hat. Throughout the series, George gets into all sorts of trouble due to his inquisitive nature. In subsequent books, like Curious George Takes a Job and Curious George Visits the Library, George explores various occupations and places, always finding himself in numerous predicaments. From being a painter to a firefighter rather, George's curiosity often leads to chaos, but his kind heart and willingness to help always save the day. The books in the series are filled with colorful illustrations and samples, engaging storytelling, making them perfect for children or for young readers. George's adventures teaches us the valuable lessons about. So the theme revolves around curiosity, problem solving, and the importance of friendship. Despite the trouble he often finds himself, George's positive outlook and determination make him a beloved character for both children and adults. So overall, the Curious George series is a timeless collection of books that entertain not only the young readers but also the adult ones, and it also elicit important life lessons. So for the setting of the Curious George, George and the man with the yellow hat actually live in an apartment in the big city. Although the actual name of the city is still unknown, but the setting occurs in an apartment in the big city. So the next one is Charlotte's Webs. So before we discuss the story or the Charles Webs, let's first discuss the author of Charlotte's Web. So the author of Charlotte's Web was Edwin Brooks White, more commonly known or called as E.B. White. White was contributing editor for the New Worker magazine for 49 years, from 1927 to 1976. In addition to his many books and essays, White wrote two other classic children's books, Stuart Little, which is very common to us, and I myself have watched the film, and it was very entertaining and it is also interesting. The Stuart Little published in 1945 and The Trumpet of the Swan published in the year 1970. As a result, White received several awards during his lifetime, including a Pulitzer Prize citation, a Presidential Medal of Freedom, the Laura Ingalls Wilder Awards, and the National Medal for Literature. So the summary of Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web is about Wilbur, the pig, and how his friend Charlotte, a barn spider, saves his life. So Charlotte's Web is the story of Wilbur the pig and his friendship with Fern Abbey, the little girl who adopts him and his barnyard friends. Most importantly, Charlotte, the spider. When a pig gives birth to a litter of piglets at the arable farm, Fern's father, Mr. Albert, decides to slaughter Wilbur because he is the runt. But Fern persuades him to let her keep him, knowing that the pig will eventually lead to be slaughtered for his meat. Mr. Arable tries to make the separation gentler for Fern. When Wilbur is strong, he is sent to live at the farm of Mr. Zuckerman, Fern's uncle, where Fern goes to visit him as often as she can. Wilbur still misses her, however, and is lonely in his newly home until a talking spider named Charlotte befriends him, and he gets to know the other barnyard animals as well. Once Wilbur learns of his fate to be slaughtered in the winter, Charlotte agrees to help him because Charlotte knows the pain or knows the fear that the little piglet have. So he decided to help him, and she begins spinning words in her web to describe Wilbur, the first being son pig. When Zuckerman notices the message in the web over Wilbur's pig pen, he thinks it's a miracle because no one in this world that can make something like that, especially an animal. So he perceived that as a miracle. So Charlotte continues spinning miraculous messages in her web, like terrific and radiant, attracting much attention. So Charlotte enlists the help of the barn rat, Templeton, who scores the dump for labels, and snips off casts of paper that she can use to copy the words. When Wilbur is entered into the county fair, Charlotte and Templeton accompany him so that Charlotte can continue her work and make Wilbur famous. At the fair, her messages draw many crowds, and Wilbur is praised by all who sees him. During this time, Charlotte is spinning a sack for the eggs she will be laying, but she is also reaching the end of her life and sadly tells Wilbur that she won't be returning to the barn with him after the fair. She entrusts him with her eggs and he takes them back to the barn, so guarding them until they hatch. So for this following, in a long tradition of animal stories in children's literature, White uses the talking barnyard characters of a spider both to awaken the imagination of the young readers and as well as the adult readers. So the characters involved in the story are Wilbur, Charlotte, Templeton, and Templeton. So the setting of Charlotte's Web is primarily in the countryside at the Arable family farm, the Zuckerman farm, and the fairgrounds. The story revolves around a lovable bear named Winnie the Pooh and his adventures in the Hundred-Acre Wood alongside his friends Piglet, Eeyore, Tiger, Rabbit, Owl, Kanga, and Roo. The book is filled with whimsical tales, endearing characters, and valuable life lessons. The story begins with an introduction to the Hundred-Acre Wood, a charming and idyllic setting where Pooh and his friends reside. Each chapter brings a new adventure for Pooh and his friends. Whether it's helping Eeyore find his lost tail, searching for honey, or embarking on an expedition to catch a heffalump, the characters face various challenges and learn important lessons along the way. Pooh, the main protagonist, is portrayed as a simple-minded yet kind-hearted bear with a penchant for honey. His favorite is honey. His innocent and often humorous outlook on life brings joy to readers of all the ages. Piglet, his timid and loyal friend, often accompanies Pooh on his escapades, offering support and friendship. Eeyore, the melancholic donkey, adds a touch of dry humor and teaches the value of resilience in the face of adversity. Tiger, the exuberant and bouncy tiger, brings a sense of energy and excitement to the story. His enthusiasm and zest for life serve as a reminder to embrace joys and embrace one's unique qualities. Rabbit, on the other hand, the organized and slightly anxious character, often finds himself caught in Pooh's whimsical plans, teaching the importance of balance and patience. Owl is considered as one of the wise and knowledgeable bird. One of the friends of Pooh serves as a voice of reason and imparts wisdom to the other characters. Kanga, the nurturing kangaroo, and her dewy Roo embody the spirit of motherly love and care, providing a warm and comforting presence in the Hundred-Acre Wood.